But our top story is all about a line that I've told you will be important in this era. Between the big things, and there are some big things going on, and the little things that they want you to believe are big things. Allow me to explain. President Trump, right now, is doing something that could be a big thing if it worked, if it happened, if it actually goes into effect. And many people care about it, and the government is dealing with it, and the courts will deal with it, and we've been covering it. Other channels, other outlets are covering it. No one's saying this is something to ignore. But if you keep your head on straight and the facts in front of you with a little knowledge of law and history, this could end up being a little thing, even though he wants you to think it's very big. What we're talking about is a path that could lead to another relatively quick legal defeat for Donald Trump. And he had one last week, you remember, on the citizenship issue, an initial court setback, because Donald Trump is doing a lot with these orders. Every president can sign executive orders, but if you sign orders that aren't really in their structure orders, they're more like what a law would be or what the Constitution would be. Calling it an order doesn't mean you override existing laws or the Constitution. Even if you haven't brushed up on civics in a while, you probably remember that. And so Donald Trump right now is doing something where we already have a Constitution and a lot of legal precedent that says this is Congress's power, not his. So before I get into the weeds of it, just keep that in mind. We're talking about something that is a government power, but it's Congress's power, which is spending, not the president's power. So Donald Trump has said he wants to just freeze something that involves spending, all the federal grants. So Washington Post, right, it's news. I'm not saying we would ignore it. It's actually, if he got away with it, would be a huge thing. But this is a plan. This is an order where the White House wants to pause federal grants. You could see the headline ending with confusion because Congress, once it grants and authorizes money, that doesn't just get pulled by the White House. Now, the White House, under Trump, says they want to align federal spending with presidential priorities, meaning they might want to reverse or seize money that Congress, under law, and a previous president already signed. And that's not how it works. You don't usually get to do that. Maybe some rare exceptions, but you don't usually get to do that. I also want to tell you, in fairness to Donald Trump and his legal team, the same plan, the written plan, includes a statement that they want to do it within practicable law. So they're saying a plan that goes beyond the law, and then a smart lawyer put in there within the law. And then we're going to battle it out. In the meantime, though, when one branch of government just announces it's going to take all the spending power, which could amount to a lot of money, from the other branch of government against the Constitution, well, that kind of thing does spark immediate, far-reaching, and sometimes even ferocious responses.
This decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional.
This president has exceeded his authority. He has violated the Constitution.
The chaos that this is creating is horrendous.
People should think about the mom who doesn't know if she can get her kid to childcare today.
If you drive on a road, you're impacted. If you get health care, you're impacted. If your children are being educated in our schools, you're impacted.
He is breaking the law.
This is what a king does.
Now, you can see a lot of the focus there, understandably, is on what the president can and can't do. And you saw the faces and voices of people criticizing this or saying it's flatly unlawful, unconstitutional. But that would be true regardless of who did it or who the president is. Here in the news, our job would be to tell you if any president, if you had a very liberal president that said they were just going to seize all the money for liberal priorities, maybe redirect it to climate change without getting climate change funding from the Congress, I would tell you they can't do that traditionally. And people could debate it. That's what's happening here. Now, this order is very broadly written. As I mentioned, it sort of has this extra caveat language, within the law. But what it does is break constitutional law. The impact, though, could be huge. You might say, okay, we're talking what, millions, billions? We're talking tens of billions? Remember, we had an election about the economy and what the government can or should do to help people who are struggling. Well, this could actually cover, seize, or misappropriate trillions, that's trillions of dollars in spending with a T, going to things that people around the country, red state and blue, need. Things that even bipartisan laws have agreed upon are essentials, including State and local funding, right, which can go to red and blue states alike, child care, shelters for the homeless, school lunches. Now, many Republicans said that, hey, it's the honeymoon period, and a lot of what Trump's been doing, they either say okay, or they're silent, or they say a version of okay, like, we need to look at the details, I need to look more at it, but they're not exactly sounding like what I just showed you. But others, when you talk about someone who's elected to Congress, and their whole job is passing these laws that fund things, and a lot of the budget debate is the moral debate. Do you want to fund health care or not? Do you want the taxes high or low? All of that is congressional spending stuff, more or less. Some Republicans looked off guard.
I've heard from people in my district this morning asking me about it. And all I can say right now, I hope it's short-lived. There's no reason for the disruption.
No, he's not overstepping his bounds. And in fact,
we're going to try to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse.
Is it legal?
I do not know. I'm not a lawyer, but it was appropriated, so I don't see how they can just stop it.
That is a respectful way of saying it sounds illegal, because, again, think about it. If any president could do what Trump did, then most of Congress's spending and budgeting would be meaningless, because you'd just have what they called a king-like retroactive veto of everything that came before. And there are real-world consequences, because some of this has not been done well. I'm not saying that as an opinion. I'm not saying that to be mean-spirited. But government involves competence and execution. If you want to do a Pentagon program to get planes built and fly them around the world, or you want to try to give medical care through the various complex systems in the United States, you need people who know how to do it. And there were signs today that this was feeding confusion with people involved, either not knowing what they were supposed to do or not doing it effectively. Medicaid payments to states, again, red and blue, plenty of Republican states get that money, rely on it, frozen. And immediately, officials and experts were saying this was a problem, a snafu from the Trump freeze. I want to report for you the Trump White House denies that, meaning they say, acknowledge the problem. They're even saying the payments will be back soon. They say it's not related to this other freeze. So that's some of that debate. State attorneys general already taking Trump officials to court over this. And other groups that are affected, small businesses, nonprofits, also going to court. So this is a very big thing, even though I've told you that in the long run, there's no reason to think the courts of the Constitution would allow this. Where does that take us? The big part, like I told you, is that this can matter in the interim. And a heck of a lot of people who aren't billionaires and aren't pocketing crypto money have to spend time, energy on this instead of something else, and the uncertainty of that, which businesses don't like. So in that sense, this seems negative and unfair to a lot of people, as I mentioned, in states red and blue. This also, though, for Trump, if you're covering the politics and the showmanship, looks like he has picked another battle that I just showed you some Republicans seemed confused by, which could lead to a second major loss in the courts quickly. Remember, it was just last week, his first week in office, where another mechanism that was executive only, he didn't go to the Congress, he didn't compromise, but he announced that he wanted to change the citizenship clause in the Constitution's 14th Amendment, was shot down by Thursday in court. That process will play out. It'll take longer, but it was quite the setback. This could see the same result. And that Judge, a Ronald Reagan appointee, called that order blatantly unconstitutional. This is all happening now, so we don't have any final ruling on what they're trying to do to seize the congressional spending power, but late today, going into the basically 6 p.m. hour in Washington, just moments ago, a federal judge indicated they're at least going to delay the start of this new claimed spending order at least until Monday, and then again, lower courts and perhaps ultimately the Supreme Court will have to decide, are they going to let this president rewrite the Constitution itself? Congress, in both parties, certainly would not like the idea of having some random politician seize 200-plus years of the spending power precedent. So, big and little. The stakes are big. The results in the short term are big for, as I said, people affected. But the president, the outcome, the result for his administration could be making him look very little. He's drawing attention to one of the powers that the Constitution in writing very clearly gives to Congress. He's drawing attention to his powerlessness, to his supporting role in that issue. And again, that's not a criticism. It's not specific to this president. All presidents deal with the Congress in this way. That's why when you see those signing ceremonies and the budget debates and the debt ceiling debates, we had one of those in December, remember? It always involves Congress. Most people know that. Is this smart strategy? Is it flooding the zone? Or is it a mix of things where someone who has gotten in the habit of telling everyone he never wants to hear no, thus has to be told no in public, in court, smacked down like he was Thursday, rather than doing a more orderly style of governing?